So thank you again so much for being here. And without further ado, here's Gaby to give a deep dive into our strategy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lala. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. This is our fifth summit, our fifth strategy session. I can't believe it. I'm Gaby. I'm one of our co-founders here at Sister District. And, it's just been such an incredible morning. I hope everyone is feeling as energized and inspired as I am. I think it's been said several times already today that, this work remains as critical as ever. From the day that it really was just a thread on a Facebook group among our co-founders to where we are now, it's been an incredible experience to do this work with my co-founders and with all of you over the last 5 years. So very many familiar names and faces in this Zoom. It's incredible the staying power of the volunteers and the leaders that we have with us today. So thank you all for being here. And I think this summit is really a great opportunity to reflect on the Sister District strategy and take a look back at the accomplishments that we've had over the past 5 years, and take a looking forward as well, and really think about the work ahead. And so, I think that as I think we've all said in different ways, this mission of building state power is more urgent than ever. And just this morning, reading the news and thinking about the assault on democracy that's happening abroad, right, in Ukraine. Of course, we're dealing with assaults on our democracy here as well. And this idea of democracy, seeing the incredible, inspiring fight that Ukrainians, young and old, are putting into this idea of democracy right now. This idea of the public choosing its leaders in free and fair elections and being willing to die for it is an incredible moment for us. And then, of course, here, as we see Republican legislators and operatives pursuing election subversion tactics and sowing the seeds of distrust in our elections and undermining our democracy, it really makes it makes this moment that we're sharing this morning together really important. And I also think it's really important to remember that this summit is a great opportunity to reflect on the positive power of states. That's something you'll hear from me a lot this morning. From raising the minimum wage, we heard from President Butler this morning, her work in California doing that, to protecting abortion access, and importantly, pushing further than abortion access toward reproductive justice, which is really the idea that people should be able to choose to parent or not parent and be able to parent with dignity. All of that, so much of that is coming from our states in a positive way. And the last thing I want to say before we hop in is just, I think Lala said this so eloquently, this work is long, this work is never finished. We are certainly behind and remain behind in terms of state level infrastructure on the left compared to the right. And there are these ground truths, right? We have a long way to go to build enduring state power. It's been overlooked and undernourished on our side. And there are these broad trends, and I'll touch upon them, really, in law and policy that are enlarging state power. So our work is urgent, it's nonlinear. That's just how politics is. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but we have to be committed together and remain committed to this permanent project, of building progressive power in our states. Next slide, thank you. So just a quick overview of what we're going to cover this morning. We have not a super long session, but we're going to do a quick overview of our comprehensive strategy, right? Lala shared a little bit about this. This particular presentation is really focused on just one part of our strategy, the electoral strategy. So we'll spend a few minutes talking about our first, we'll take a look back at our first 5 years. We have had some recent setbacks in our work, but we've also had remarkable accomplishments. And I think it's really important to remember, we need to be thinking in terms of decades, not in terms of election cycles. And on that metric, we have certainly come so far. And of course, we have far to go, but remarkable progress. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this year and the work that lies ahead. And let's not bury the lead. We're heading into a very challenging political environment this year, and we're prepared to meet the challenge head on. We're battle ready, right? Everyone here, we will walk into this with our eyes open to the challenges. And we'll do it together, which is what we've always done at Sister District, right? I love to say many hands make the work light, and we'll continue to work together to meet this moment. So what is our mission? Why do we do what we do? Our mission has been stated so eloquently by so many, our keynote speakers and Lola as well. Our mission here is to build sustained progressive power in state legislatures by electing reflective, inspiring candidates and supporting them as legislators once they're elected. Why do we do this work? Why state legislatures? You've probably heard me say this before. These are critically overlooked venues of power for us. These are the sleeping giants of policy, our state legislatures. These are our policy pipelines, right? Political scientists call this policy diffusion. That's the term for this phenomenon that policy moves around. And I think, President Butler mentioned a few examples of this, and I think we heard others this morning as well. Policies move around, right? From state to state, from state to federal. So many policies start in our states. Justice Brandeis referred to our states as the laboratories of democracy. And really the right has been so masterful, right? At weaponizing state legislatures for their goals, their regressive policy goals. And, we have to build capacity, right? And this is important, not just in our blue states, right? Yes, in our blue states for sure, but also among our progressive legislators in divided government and red states. This is part of the focus of our Purple District Network. And come to our panel this afternoon at 3 Eastern, our alumni panel, who are all Purple District Network members as well, all serving in divided government states. State legislatures are a vital key to fair and free elections, voting rights, literally democracy itself. This cannot be underscored enough, especially as we go into this year's elections, next year's elections, going down to 2024, right? And another plug, we will be having an election subversion panel tomorrow, where we'll get into some of these issues in much more detail. So I encourage you all to come to that panel as well. And then, huge return on investment for volunteer and donor time at the state legislative level. And there is this trajectory, as I've mentioned, towards narrowing federal protections and enlarging state power. And that certainly creates gigantic challenges for us, certainly in the election space and voting and all the rest. But it's also important, I think, to remember, celebrate, imagine the positive power of states as well. I know many of you were here last year for our summit when beloved progressive messaging expert Anat Shankar-Osario gave our keynote, and she spoke to this so clearly. We have to say what we're for, not just what we're against, right? We have a tremendous opportunity to expand the narrative and our imagination about what states can be for us towards an ideology of, if progressive federalism is a little bit of a fraught term, maybe what we could call interdependent federalism, right? Getting away from the idea of state power as inferior or somehow unsavory compared to federal power, but really understanding that they're interdependent and both need to be attended to on our side. And that's going to be really a focus for our civic engagement and all the rest. So, great. So how do we do it? As Lala mentioned, we have 4 pillars. It's a comprehensive strategy. This presentation really focuses on the first pillar, which is winning elections, but there is much more, and we'll touch upon it really briefly. So winning elections, that is core to how we achieve this goal, this long-term goal. We do it by rigorous data analysis, qualitative as well as quantitative. It requires a lot of talking with people on the ground to understand the opportunities as well as understanding the data. We unleash our powerful grassroots folks, many of whom are on this call, to help our candidates win, right? Our incredible hard side field and fundraising programming. And we have a comprehensive candidate services program, and our wonderful organizing and political director, Jarvis Houston, will tell us a little bit about that program later on as well. We also support organizers, right? Both internally, everyone on this Zoom is one of our incredible organizers, right? Or so many of you. So internally as well as externally, right? Through our State Bridges program. And, you know, this is a new program that we started last year that's really driving visibility and attention, resources to the incredible year-round power building organizations that are on the ground in all the states, everywhere. And really driving resources to them. And, you know, I think that we understand the animating purpose behind this program is the understanding that a critical way that we can make the electoral gains that we want to see and also create sustained civic engagement in our states, right, which is a cornerstone of a healthy democracy. People, a voting public that's, you know, that's invested in the process, is by supporting year-round community-based organizing. So really proud of that program. Our next event is on Wednesday. Please join us. It'll be for two incredible organizations in Michigan. And another pillar here, of course, is developing legislators. Lala touched on this a bit. We do that through our Purple District Network, which is the only national network for progressive frontliners, right? Folks who are in fragile seats, who won by just a little bit. Where in all types of political contexts, red trifectas, blue trifectas, divided government, really creating the space and the opportunity to exchange best practices, policy ideas, governance strategies, all the rest. We're also co-conveners of a national table of organizations like ours that provide state legislators with support. Proud to co-convene that table with State Innovation Exchange 6 and the Pipeline Initiative. And then, of course, through our Future Winners program, which is a partnership with Emily's List and Run for Something, where we're taking, you know, really leaning into this idea, which is true, that losses, close losses, are often down payments on future wins, and really making sure that folks who ran before and came up a little short have the resources and the backing, right, and the moral support as well as the financial and infrastructure support to run again and win. And then our last pillar is to educate and empower. And tomorrow we'll have a session from our Director of Research, Dr. Mallory Roman, will tell us a bit about our award-winning political research program, which is core to how we do our research and analysis for race targeting, data targeting, as well as all of the incredible voter and volunteer engagement research that we do and all the rest, and other civic engagement programming. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into that first pillar, which is winning elections. And so, you know, our political strategy has really remained steadfast throughout the years. There are over 7,000 state legislative seats in this country, right? 99 chambers. So we have to have some guiding principles, some guiding framework for how to prioritize, how to decide where we're going to be investing our time and our attention. And so generally speaking, we are always each year looking for chambers, state legislative chambers, that fall roughly within these three categories. There's blue flips, which are chambers where maps provide Democrats with the opportunity to compete for a legislative majority. And, you know, just to emphasize that doesn't mean that we're going to flip all of these chambers in this category this year or in any given year. It means there's an opportunity to compete, right? So many states and many chambers do not provide Democrats with an opportunity to compete. There's no chance to compete for a majority in places like Wisconsin, right? But there are other states like Michigan, and we'll talk about that, where there's a pathway. The maps provide a pathway. So that's the way to think about the blue flips is, from my perspective, is that these are chambers that have a pathway to a majority, to flipping blue. Blue inroads, which are chambers where Democrats have a fragile majority that could be in immediate jeopardy of flipping red. And then blue inroads chambers where we're unlikely to flip in the short term, but we have to hold the line, not lose the fragile incumbents that we do have, and really position ourselves for future wins. In any given year, the mix of chambers and states will differ based on which states are holding elections, the shift of the composition of chambers, which changes each year, and really, really importantly, broader electoral opportunities. And this is a really important piece of the equation because these shift every year too. And we're always looking for opportunities to force multiply our efforts, right? Where our efforts to drive awareness and resources and turnout at the bottom of the ballot can really reverberate all the way to the top of the ticket in critical battleground states and in states where there are these other elections that are happening that are really, really critical. And we'll talk more about that. So just taking a look back for a second, this slide just provides some of the accomplishments over the last 5 years. These are remarkable achievements. And, certainly we experienced this, we at Sister District, but broadly, Democrats experienced setbacks in Virginia last year. But as I said, we need to be thinking in terms of decades, not election cycles. There is in politics a forward back sometimes. That is how this works. And the key is sticking with it during the hard times and the easy times, and really committing to this idea of democracy in our states, of building state power, and really thinking in a longer term period of time. And on that metric, on that perspective, these 5 years have been remarkably productive. James, the Senate in Virginia was not up last year. So that's that. Oh, and I would say, one other thing about Virginia is that while we did lose the House last year, the new maps in Virginia, I think, provide a clear path to the majority. So we'll be back. We will be back, and the maps in that state are favorable for us, the new maps. Great. So, as I alluded to earlier, we are heading into a challenging political environment. And, when we released our states this year, I published a blog post that goes into a bit more detail and provides some context there. So I encourage folks to check that out for more detail than we can really provide at this moment. But what I do want to say is just broadly, I think that some of the, if you could go back one slide. I apologize. I pointed when I didn't mean to point. So I just want to say a few things here. The first is that, as you guys probably know, or as you may have heard, historically speaking, the president's party tends to do poorly in midterm elections. And, part of I think oftentimes that's misunderstood as a referendum on the president's party. It's better understood as a reflection of how excited and how enthusiastic the out party is, right? So Biden's numbers this year, yes, they matter, and how people feel about Democrats, yes, all of that matters. And a huge factor that will drive the results that we see this year is actually Republican enthusiasm. We struggle with that on the Democratic side, down ballot every year. This is the down ballot roll-off and enthusiasm gap problem that we have identified many times. Dr. Roman and I published an article last fall on this phenomenon in Virginia. I'll post it in here again for folks who are interested. We've seen this election cycle over and over. Democrats struggle down ballot with roll-off, where fewer people vote for Democrats down ballot than up ballot. And on the Republican side, the opposite is true. We saw this in Virginia last year. This may kind of blow your mind. about 5,000 more people in Virginia voted for Republicans running for state ledge than voted for the Republican governor who won, right? So more people voted for Republicans down ballot than up ballot. We had the exact opposite situation where 60,000 more people voted for Terry McAuliffe than for our candidates down ballot, and we lost by 750 votes, right? So we're fighting down ballot roll off. It's a problem for us. I don't want to overemphasize Virginia's results. As I just said, this was a very narrow loss, right? 800 votes out of millions cast. This was not a drubbing. It was not a rout. But it does indicate very clear enthusiasm on the Republican side heading into this year. And then finally, redistricting, it's a mixed bag. It's been a mixed bag. Courts, commissions, legislatures have created a sort of a heterogeneous landscape in terms of maps and process, right? Timeline, there's been delays and all the rest. There are new maps that provide us with opportunities to compete. And there are other maps that have further entrenched Republican gerrymanders that, make things very difficult for us. It's really a mixed bag. So bottom line, it's going to take a tremendous amount of energy, resources, attention to meet these challenges this year head on, and we can do it, right? We are prepared. We know what our strategy, what fits in our strategy, and where we really believe that we have the highest sort of leverage for our time and our dollar and all the rest. So, as I said earlier, our general political strategy remains the same, but every year we weight our selections based on contextual factors, right? Based on what else is going on, frankly. And this year we're really focusing our state selections on states that have nested, competitive up ballot races that have critical implications for truly our democracy. So we're talking about Senate races, congressional races, gubernatorial races, and yes, Secretary of State elections. Very, very important. So we're really focused on states that have those other important statewide and national races, where again, our work at the bottom of the ballot can really reverberate to the top. We're also focused on places where redistricting commissions, where courts, where legislatures have produced fairer maps, where we have an opportunity to compete, not just this year, but over the course of the next decade. Remember, we have to think in terms of decades, and we are. And so, thinking about how we can position ourselves this year and over the next several years for the entire decade. And then finally, states where Democratic incumbents are really vulnerable and where we have to stave off, frankly, Republican supermajorities, particularly in critical battleground states. So what does that look like this year? This is the general landscape, right? And so, again, the blue flips, just want to underline the point. I am not saying that we will flip all of these chambers or, this year. These are states where the maps give us an opportunity to compete. We have the opportunity to build legislative majorities in these states, and for the blue flips. Just to run through them briefly, in Pennsylvania, just to highlight some of the nested opportunities, there's an open gubernatorial race there. Very important because in Pennsylvania, the governor appoints the Secretary of State. So that's a bit of a twofer, right? So very important nested opportunities in Pennsylvania, also a strong Senate flip. Michigan, the Independent Commission produced maps that give us a chance to compete, right? Very, very critical gubernatorial and Secretary of State defense, right? Those women in Michigan are up this year and they really, really need our help, as well as several competitive congressional races. These are electoral and democracy battlegrounds, right? Both in Pennsylvania and Michigan, the Republicans have been just extreme in their pursuit of undermining our democracy. Arizona is an interesting case. They have an independent commission. It produced maps. The maps give us the opportunity to compete for legislative majorities over the next decade. based on trends, demographic trends, and all the rest. I think for Arizona, we have to probably take a longer view of that project than 2022, but there are opportunities there. Very important open gubernatorial and Secretary of State flip opportunities in Arizona. We of course have a critical Senate defend in Arizona, and several competitive congressional races. This is an electoral and democracy battleground. I would argue that Arizona is ground zero for election subversion, and coming through the state legislature. Join us tomorrow for our election subversion panel. We will have Arizona State Senator Martin Quesada join us to tell us exactly what's going on in Arizona for the battle for democracy that's happening in that state legislature. Nevada is an interesting case. This is a blue hold. Narrow and vulnerable Democratic majorities that we have to defend in Nevada. If we think that Nevada is safe, just like many thought that Virginia was safe, we are mistaken. There are also really important nested races there. Gubernatorial hold for us, of course, Cortez Masto in the Senate. We have to hold that. Several congressionals and an open Secretary of State race in Nevada. So very, very important. And I think just to emphasize the point, Nevada is not safe. That is not a safe blue trifecta. And we need to pay attention there. Wisconsin, Georgia, and North Carolina fit, I think, into the blue inroads bucket at this point. In Wisconsin, we don't have maps yet. There are no maps. March 1st is the deadline there, unless they continue to blow those deadlines. We know that the Republican-controlled legislature is working to further enshrine the gerrymanders in Wisconsin. And I'll be honest, we're in a position where we're just a few seats from falling into legislative superminority. 1 seat away in the Senate, and I think 4 in the Assembly, 4 or 5. So it's in the danger zone for that superminority status. Very, very critical that we hold on to the gubernatorial rate, that we win the gubernatorial this year in Wisconsin and continue to hold the governor's mansion so that we can retain the veto in Wisconsin. Strong Senate flip opportunity, Secretary of State also this year in Wisconsin. Although note, in Wisconsin, the Secretary of State does not oversee elections the way that office does in other states. Georgia, these new maps, they remain Republican gerrymanders. However, the House map in particular gives Dems the opportunity to compete for some new seats, which is exciting. And obviously, amazing gubernatorial flip opportunity with Stacey Abrams running. We have to defend Senator Warnock this year. There's a chance to flip the Secretary of State in Georgia, and again, a critical electoral and democracy battleground happening in Georgia. And then North Carolina, new maps fresh off the press. The House map looks better for us than the Senate map. There are some opportunities to compete for some seats, in addition to really doing some incumbent protection in North Carolina. Very strong Senate flip opportunity, and all the rest. And so that's an overview of what things are starting to look like for us, and sort of generally where things fall into place for our map. Now, the exact seats in the chambers that we're targeting this year depend. They depend on a few factors that we're not quite there yet, right? First of all, final maps. There are, as I mentioned, we don't have maps yet in some states, including Wisconsin. So we'll have to see how that goes. Candidate recruitment, as I mentioned, the timelines have been moved in many states because of the census delays, which then cascaded into redistricting delays, which then cascaded into redistricting litigation. And so it's made recruiting for candidates difficult in some places. It's hard to decide if you're going to run for office if you don't know what district you live in. So we're working through that, and that's coming together. And then, of course, our own internal resources and volunteer capacity. That's also part of what drives the exact seats and chambers that we'll end up endorsing in this year. We are already on the ground working hard, doing all of the data analysis and qualitative research that goes into our pre-endorsement process. We have this sort of process where it's don't call us, we'll call you. We reach out directly to specific candidates who we've already identified, as opposed to having an open endorsement process, because of just the amount of work that we put in behind the scenes to understand where the opportunities are best for us. So we're doing all of that analysis. We're deep in conversation with our allies, both nationally and on the ground, to understand, really what the opportunities are and what the challenges are in various chambers that we're interested in, and working toward a late April wave 1 endorsement, as well as a potential wave 2 in June after some more primaries go through. So we do, I think, have a little bit of time for Q&A. So let's see. I saw
Gabby, I'm just going to jump in since we have about 10 minutes, and I was just going to relay a couple questions to you.
Oh, okay, sure.
So a few folks were asking how we are working with other political groups on state-led races, and how are we able to coordinate and grow our partnerships?
I mean, this is a great question, and I encourage folks to also ask this question of Jarvis when you hear his talk on candidate services, because he is, of course, running our fantastic national phone bank program, which has just so many incredible partners, from Run for Something to Human Rights Campaign and all the rest. In terms of the political side as well, we work extremely closely with the state and local team at Emily's List. I would say they are my closest colleagues and allies, constantly relaying information about candidates, about caucus leadership, about local goings-ons in all of the states that we're working in. So they're a tremendous source of information. Same with the DLCC. The regional staff at the DLCC is an incredible, they're incredible resources for us in understanding local dynamics, because for both Emily's List and the DLCC, their political staff is organized into regions. And so there's, a person who is, whose portfolio is, just Pennsylvania and New York, right? And so they can really go deep and know much more than we can about the local context in those places. So incredible groups there. Run for Something is another organization that we work closely with, both on sort of the political intel and strategy, sort of understanding what's happening in various places, as well as really helping drive our collective message about the importance of down ballot races. So we have tremendous partners in the space, both on the political side, on the organizing side, which I know Jarvis will talk about for the phone bank programs and all the rest. It's wonderful to have such incredible allies in the space.
Agreed. Absolutely. So could you talk a little bit more about how we vet candidates? I know you said it's a don't call us, we call you, but just in terms of their progressive values and being reflective of their constituents, et cetera.
Yeah, so we have a great page on our website, which hopefully someone can drop into the chat, which is our endorsement process. And it's broken into a step-by-step. I think we have 6 steps in the process. Oh, here it is. I found it. If it loads. Oh, here it is. Great. And this is a great page to check out if you haven't seen it before. It really breaks down exactly what we do. And this is the same process we use every year. The first cut is always, the data, right? Identifying the chambers that might be in play. The next step is really diving into specific districts, right? And that's a combination of data analysis, looking at prior voting history for that district, looking at census information about who lives there, trends, who's moving in, who's moving out, voter registration advantage, partisan advantage one way or the other, right? Trying to understand at a district level what things really look like and what the opportunities are. It also, that step really involves, as I mentioned, lots of conversations with folks on the ground, our state bridges partners, folks in the Democratic Party in various states, electeds, our alumni, grassroots organizations, labor. I mean, we talk to so many folks to understand if our target list is matching theirs or if we're missing anything, if there's things we should know about a particular place or candidate or so forth. And then it comes, the matter comes to, well, who's actually running, right? Which is a huge deal, right? That's a huge piece of this, is the candidate, assessing the candidate as well. We're looking for candidates who reflect their communities. We want to build towards a reflective democracy. We're looking for women, candidates of color, folks from non-traditional backgrounds, working class folks, right? Folks with lived experiences that will help in their legislatures. Once we kind of go through that whole process and come up with the target list of specific candidates, remember, we don't get involved in contested primaries. So the earliest we would actually reach out to a candidate to see if they'd like to talk about our endorsement would be after or close to the filing deadline, if it looks like they have a clear field and they won't have a primary, or after the primary if they're victorious in their primary campaign. And then there's a candidate sort of questionnaire or a set of policy planks that we require all of our candidates to agree to. It's on the webpage, you can see it. We have to protect a woman's right to choose. We need to expand our social, protect and expand our social safety net. Climate change is real and we have to protect the environment. Those sorts of policy pieces. And then the last step, of course, is matching our candidates to our incredible teams. And that there's a lot of thought and back and forth with our teams and all the rest that goes into that process as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's do one more. We have just like about 2 or 3 minutes. This is big, but a few people have asked, how can we prevent down ballot drop off for Democrats? Just your 90-second analysis.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I think, and so the short answer is we need a lot more civic engagement and awareness on our side about the importance of down ballot races. I think, however, it goes even deeper, and I'll leave you all with this. I think that on our side, the liberal or progressive side, the aversion to state power and sort of the belief that state power is inferior to federal power and something that can be overlooked and all the rest goes really, really deep. It's a matter of political sociology, right? Understanding this aversion and avoidance of state power. That is the opposite on the right, right? People who are generally aligned with conservative views, it is baked into their belief system that states matter. And you can draw a line right back to the Civil War, right? And the power of states that the Southern states pushed for against a strong federal government. We do not have a deeply baked in belief and desire to build state power on our side. And that cascades into every part of this project. And it goes back again to, I'll close with a knot, right? We need to be for something, not just against something. And we need to cultivate a better understanding that can flow all the way down to voters, right? But we have to, we have to really get clear about why states matter to us and about why it's good to build state power. So that is part of our mission. And whether you want to call it progressive federalism or interdependent federalism or whatever, states matter to us too. And we need to get that message really clear and spread it far and wide.